Hello. I've covered wars, you know. And welcome to Code and Colour.
We really need to start running these by each other. We discuss all things animation, video games, and digital drawing.
I am your illustrious Dead Rising quoting lead host, Josh.
And I am the I need to PR train Josh, Tyler.
This is the second time you said that. It feels like there's a running commentary.
Well, you know, maybe take it on board at some point.
Maybe. Oh, never.
Or never. Brilliant.
Go on. I asked you first last time and you almost fell off your chair. So.
How have you been, buddy?
Oh.
I always say buddy.
Oh.
I literally always say, how have you been, buddy?
Fills my joy.
It's not my fault you haven't paid attention. Do you know what? Just how have you been then?
Ow, cold. I've been good. I have been doing a lot of drawing, as always. I say a lot of drawing. I've been drawing one thing. I've been drawing Raphael from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
And really sort of trying to make it look quite artsy and very sort of
artsy.
Like realistic. In fact, no, I'm not going for realistic. I'm going for more.
I was going to say, you are completely not going for realistic.
No. I think I'm going to try and aim for something a little bit more 3D. But
don't go for a realistic approach to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because that live action film is an abomination.
Yes, okay, but the turtles themselves are phenomenal and they look really well done. But I do agree.
No, they look terrifying.
Really?
Like them.
You didn't like 8-Foot Shrek?
No, I really didn't. Actually.
I watched it and I was like, oh my god, this is Shrek in live action. This is how it could go.
If they did a live action Shrek, I think I would actually throw myself out the window.
Fair. Not much else to report. Been watching a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Watching more episodes of Jackie Chan like I was last week. Basically just doing the whole not much to offer really. I've been just doing the same old, Code and Colour stuff.
The same shit, different day, Josh, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. And I've enjoyed it. It's been good. It's been nice and peaceful. What about you?
Perfect. Well, as always, not too shabby. And you might have noticed I'm in a different location than usual. So I am off work this week, and I decided to come visit some family down in, I would like to say sunny Devon, but unfortunately it is abysmal outside. It's.
Who says that with a really red nose?
Well, it was lovely yesterday. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was out all day on a boat and had a pint on the beach and stuff. It was beautiful. Right, that's what I signed up for when I just decided to come back for this week. But not this crap. It is. Yeah, it's not the one. But it is lovely to be back. A bit of change of scenery. The beach is a minute walk away,
nice. And
there's a pub across the road. So, it's right there, all there for me.
Did you take your Switch to Devon?
No.
Oh,
I took my PlayStation instead.
Oh well, that is fair, but that is a crying shame because I have also been playing a lot of Tears in the Kingdom.
I haven't been playing any in the last week, but I have been drawing quite a lot. As with what I always am like when it comes to drawing, I don't do any drawings for a few days, and then suddenly I bash out 3 or 4.
Which sounds wrong, but we'll just move past that.
Well, no innuendo intended there, nothing. But I've been what have I been drawing? So I drew the tall neck from the Horizon games in a black and white sort of schematic kind of way, which I thought looked cool. And then I did Noodle from Gorillaz, the band Gorillaz, and the monkey in a gi, in a martial arts gi from when the band did the Do Your Thing campaign with Converse in 2012. Interesting, that's also where that noodle came from. And I was going to draw the rest of the band, but they're not all as interesting to look at as like Noodle's the coolest looking one, and she's got all these cool little outfits and masks and stuff, so I just went with her. Drew that, and then I've been drawing. I started drawing a clicker from Last of Us. Actually quite hard, to be fair, just to sort of get the nuances of all the face and all that malarkey.
And the layers.
But, yeah, it's just difficult.
Mm.
It is very difficult. But Yeah, no, I've been really enjoying some drawing. I think having a change of scenery is really helping. It's really sparking a bit of creativity in me. I think being out in the countryside, maybe, to have that little refresh, it's good. So, yeah, I've been doing that. That's about it, really. I haven't really watched or played anything, actually.
Fair.
Not within the remit of what we do, anyway.
No.
Yeah.
Just keeping it peaceful. Like it.
Yeah, peaceful. Been been keeping up with the news with last week's topic, and just wanted to touch on that a little bit, actually, because we there has been some updates. So shall we get into that quickly?
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So the WGA strikes and the SAG-AFTRA strikes. It is AFTRA, isn't it? It is AFTRA. The strikes obviously have continued, and since last week, which I guess is a good thing. However, it would have been nice to be able to talk about it when we would, did a whole episode devoted to it. But since last week, some news has come to light, and I don't know if any of you remember we were speaking specifically about Warner Brothers quite a bit, actually. And one of the things I said is about them being able to write off a few shows as tax write-offs, and the majority, I think, if not all that list, were animated shows, which, says a lot about the priority of the medium. But there we go. But since then, the animation staff of Warner Brothers have decided to unionize, which I think we can all agree is a real step in the right direction. Yeah. And Josh, do you have any thoughts, feelings about that particular matter?
I just want to say, you're welcome, because obviously Warner Brothers heard our podcast, heard our rant.
That's so wild.
And just decided to do this great step forward and unionize their staff, and I think it's a great step, a great movement, and I take full credit for it. So yeah,
you take full credit.
Yeah,
Warner Brothers have gone, oh damn it, that CNC podcast, they'll ruin us,
Listen, we're as big as Elon Musk right now,
Honestly, on top of the world. We'll be rebranding with an X as well soon.
100%. We'll be a Y. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Warner Brothers. Why bother?
Why? Yeah. Back on the subject matter. No, I think it's really good to see that staff are starting to, protect themselves and put things in place to protect themselves from these big corporations that don't actually give a shit about the little people, as we've seen in the past with lots of these companies. So I'm happy to see that, and I hope we see more of this. And I actually hope that from the staff working at these big studios and the big companies unionizing, I'm hoping that sort of acts as a wake-up call. Whether it will, and I'm just being overly ambitious, that remains to be seen. But it would be nice to see these studios taking this more seriously and actually start treating their staff with respect. Because if you're essentially... Warner Brothers have just not particularly had a good year, right? All the films they've released have been crap. They shot a film entirety and then decided to scrap it before it was ever released. And then decided they can do some tax write-offs to animation shows.
Which was Batman, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batgirl. It was a Batgirl.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Batgirl, yes.
Which would have probably been a good film. I think at the very least they should have released it, or at least put it on digital, like a streaming
Let people
platform.
enjoy it. You know what I mean?
It could have gone HBO Max and just been like, cool. Also, Warner Brothers need to sort out HBO Max. Why is that still only available in America? It's very annoying. I'd like to watch the HBO show, the Harley Quinn show.
Very much so. Off the back of that, and obviously we don't want to. We've already delved into this topic quite a bit, so I'll just try and keep it brief. But what do you think that James Gunn being the head of DC has something to do with this unionization? Because he is a writer himself, and if he's the biggest swinger in your company at the moment,
yeah,
he's a writer.
It goes without saying, Warner Brothers have clearly got a bit of a reputation for being able to just drop what they want when they want. And James, whilst he is a big name, and I'm sure comes with a hell of an insurance as well, if he's having to protect himself, then as the little people, I'd be like, I'm gonna follow that. That man knows what he's doing. That man knows how to navigate this horrible industry. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of information that has come to like about who particularly are unionizing and what kind of comes with that. So obviously, when we get more information, we will, we'll likely discuss it on here. I think it's definitely, whilst we've done an episode dedicated to it, I definitely think it's a subject we'll be following and discussing as time goes by. But yeah, that's just basically what we wanted to talk about. But the majority of what we're going to talk about today, we have a lovely episode for you today. We've decided to do a bit of another case study, really. We did one a few weeks ago for Sucker Punch and obviously Studio Ghibli, but we're going to go down another video game studio, and that is the wonderful Japanese company Capcom.
Little indie studio.
Little indie studio, yeah. Really, you probably have never heard of anything they made, but if you have,
this is for you.
It's for you. But if you haven't heard of them, you should definitely check out their games. Honestly, so niche. No one's ever heard of them.
No.
Shall we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Perfect.
So, today we're going to discuss a little indie studio by the name of Capcom.
Who are they?
Yeah, they are a publisher. Should you ask, Tyler? They are a publisher who have published a ton of games, is what I'll say. I was going to say something else, but it's a metric ton of games over the years, since 1983, when they were first formed.
1983.
Yeah, which is just a little bit older than you, but definitely older than me.
That means they're 40 years old.
I know. 40 years of goodness as well. Like, even if you're not a huge Capcom fan, there's something for you to play there. They were formed by a gentleman, and I apologise for the pronunciation.
You're gonna Josh about to butcher the name.
I'm gonna assume the T is silent. The name was Kenzo Sugimoto.
Do you know, that's not bad.
I'm going with that as a T up front.
I imagine the T is at the front of Sugimoto.
It is, yeah.
Right,
like Django, the T is silent. And it was and the headquarters is in Chaoku, Osaka, in Japan, which sounds awesome, and I want to visit that.
Lovely.
So, just to sort of deep dive into this, and the reason we wanted to do like a little case study on this particular brand itself is because they're a very stylized company. A lot of their games, a lot of the games recently run off the same engine, which is the RE engine, and the RE engine, for people that don't know, is the Resident Evil engine. So this is something I found out recently, that the Resident Evil 4 engine that they use for the remake, which is still a phenomenal looking game, as well as 2 and 3, is also the same engine they used in Street Fighter.
Is that? That's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, and because of that, it's actually lost a bit of its stylization of Street Fighter, because, and I'm not a huge Street Fighter fan, I know of Street Fighter, I've played Street Fighter in my time, but my favourites from that series have been 4 and 5, because they went for that watercolour, stylish, like paint splatter sort of art style, and it really grabbed me, to the point where there's an image, which I'll get to show Tyler afterwards, of Ryu, the main character from Street Fighter, who's like stood with his back to the person, in this case, and there's like paint splodges all across the screen, and it looks so stylized and so unique that it was one of those things where I was just like, you know what, I fell in love with that art style, and I actually wanted to get that tattooed on the back of my leg at one point when I was younger, but I never managed to get it.
What made you think they changed it? Like, what would you think their reasoning behind changing it is? Cheaper?
Maybe the Resident Evil engine is a new thing that they've implemented for Street Fighter 6. And because the characters look more realistic, they do, like the hair looks more realistic, it looks less cartoony, and this less
cell shading as well, isn't there?
Less stylized. It looks really good. It does look really good, but it's taken away from that.
It seems like
art style.
It seems like it's gone very much the other way, kind of. Rather than it being stylized, it's gone for the higher graphic quality.
Yeah.
And with the computer generated images, which I think, CGI for the most part, has its benefits, but I think this is across all mediums that use CGI. It kind of loses the magic a little bit And I think this is where things like Pixar have fallen into this trap as well. The problem with Pixar now is they're just continuing with the same style of visuals that they've been using since 1994, maybe earlier or later, I can't really remember, but around that time period. And it just, at the time, it was groundbreaking, and for a few years it was groundbreaking, and they were being a little bit experimental with some of it, but the CGI just kind of feels like they're trying to replicate things these days in a real life quality, which they've done with Street Fighter. And I think it almost feels like they're trying to take it a little bit more seriously than it feel like a really cool arcade game that was existing in the 80s.
Yeah, and I think you are right. It's lost its shine a little bit. Like I know it's got 10 out of 10s across the board, and my brother, big brother Dale, shout out, loves Street Fighter. It's always been his game. But I think even he could probably agree that yes, it does look great now, but I think it did look better in the previous games.
Do you think they're trying to compete with something like Mortal Kombat? Because, you know, they're probably. I mean, the rumors about who was appearing in Mortal Kombat have been around for. They've been circulating for a while. The 3 big names that have popped up as DLC characters in that one. Do you think they thought we need to start entering the big leagues with these? And obviously, Resident Evil, using their engine, is working for that particular game. But Resident Evil was a horror game, so of course there's an element of seriousness to those storylines. That's the only reason I can factor into it.
Yeah, I think I got the question from Molly, my wife, for our listeners. Obviously, you know who Molly is.
I think everyone knows who Molly is at this point, Josh.
She was like, "Oh, is this Mortal Kombat?" When I showed her Street Fighter on the screen, she was like, "Oh," I was like, "No. There's 3 big fighting games. There's Street Fighter, there's Mortal Kombat, and there's Tekken. And Tekken's
is Tekken even still going?
It is. It's still going, and it's very mature in a sense of like it's all adult-y and stuff, and it's not very arcadey, and it's very technical fighting game. Mortal Kombat's the visual, blood, gore, guts, and Street Fighter's the beat 'em up. You know, the mashing the buttons, the getting loads of combos in, the flourishes, the big sonic booms, and all that sort of stuff, and that's what differentiates all 3. And I think that Street Fighter, I think it needs to go back into its sort of like its own sort of colouring and its own sort of style, because I think that's what separated it. And this is what rolling into our next part of this is what the other games that sort of go under the Capcom umbrella, they all have their own distinct paint style and art style, and I feel like are we transitioning into a point where actually we're all going to go super serious, or are we going back into the ways of actually being your own thing and doing your own style? Is that coming back again in the mic? So the other games that are in this list that they've done is Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, which is very much of the Street Fighter ilk, sort of similar art style. A little bit more.
Isn't it just the Street Fighter characters versus the Marvel characters?
Yeah, with the same sort of, but they're more of a old school arcadey sort of shell shaded, really
more
like
of a proper real button masher. That one.
Yeah, and then we've got Mega Man, which is obviously side scroller. You know, platformer, yeah, side scroll platformer. And then Resident Evil. You know, we've got the VR versions of that. We've got the third-person versions of that, and they all look exquisite. They're amazing. A little indie game called Dead Rising, which
you might have heard Josh talk about once or twice on this podcast.
Which, if anything comes from this episode, they're making a Dead Rising remake. It's being rumoured. I'm willing it.
It's not been announced.
I'm willing it into the world. Like I'm projecting
manifesting.
I'm manifesting. There we go. Manifesting it into the world. It's rumblings. Oh, Lord, if they do that. Anyway, that's got its own styling. And, you know, it's its own distinct look. Like you can sort of see what that game is based off, you know. Man with the camera, you know. A Monster Hunter, but the only game where you can really just go hunting dragons.
Do you know, I can't get into Monster Hunter no matter how hard I try.
It's a bit of a life choice, is Monster Hunter, I'm not going to lie. Honestly, it is. Like, my brother played it, and he was... It was like, I've got all these things, I've hunted these monsters, I've done this, I've done that. And I'm like, I don't know how to use the grappling hook.
Yeah, I don't get it. One thing about Monster Hunter is I remember when I used to play it, I used to be like, damn, I wish they'd do. Not that I'm massively into it, but I wish they'd do something like this with Pokemon. And then they did. They released a game last year. I'm sure most people have played this game, the Legends Arceus games. And I was like, oh, they did it. They made a Monster Hunter game. And I was like, well, there we go. If they carried on with that, fantastic. I could see Monster Hunter getting.
It is. It's one of those things. It is definitely a life choice. Like it's one of those things that I sort of dipped out, and then my brother was like, "Oh, you should get back on Monster and we'll play co-op." And I got back into it, and I was in it for 30 seconds, and I was just bombarded with stuff like do this, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm out of the loop. I'm not doing this again. Bye bye. See you later."
Yeah, I'm not into it.
But again, very stylistic, very very of its own sort of. It went for that sort of kind of arcadey, kind of realistic sort of vibe, where you could like hunt down dinosaurs essentially and huge dragons, and in beautiful worlds, and it was open world as well.
It was because I had a Monster Hunter game once, and it was an open area game. It wasn't an open world game.
Well, they transitioned. They did the latest one was Monster Hunter World, and they went all open world with it.
Maybe I'll give it a go.
I think. Do you know what? Because it's all menus and really intelligent stuff. I think you'd really like it.
Menus.
No, there's a lot of waiting
stuff
around
to read.
Yeah, there's a lot of reading to do, and it's like, oh, you've got to learn what's the weakness of this animal, and you've got to get this, and you've got to.
Oh, see, I would be into that probably.
It's a life choice, honestly. If you want Monster Hunter World, mate, your birthday's coming up soon. I'll treat you to it, and I won't see you. You know what I mean? Another game that was on this list, which actually should make a comeback because I do love a good samurai game. We're well aware of Sucker Punch's ilk. Onimusha, which is always.
I've never played that.
It was a Devil May Cry clone with samurais, and I was like, you know what, I enjoyed it. It was all right. And Ace Attorney. The reason why I've got that on the list is because that is very stylistic. That is like watching an anime cartoon.
I mean, lots of Capcom games are very stylized as well, to be fair.
Yeah,
so,
some more than others, though. Like Beautiful Joe is on there as well. They're very stylized.
Akami, that was a very stylized game.
Yeah, Akami, which needs to make a comeback.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it. I had it on the Wii. I really liked it, The Wolf. I was into that game, so they should bring that back.
So the takeaway from this is basically they've made loads of games. And loads of different styles, and with Street Fighter coming out, and they've got Exoprimal coming out soon, which again is mechs with dinosaurs. Who doesn't love mechs with dinosaurs? Right up my street.
Like 5-6-year-old Tyler is going, yeah, you know what I mean.
31-year-old Josh is going, yeah.
Yeah, to be fair.
It's one of those things. They've got a game that sort of suits everybody, and I think considering they've been going for nearly 40 years. If not, they have been going for 40 years. It shows, and I think they're going in a direction now where they've got a couple of branches that work in their favour. So, with regards to the Resident Evil franchise, they have their mainline entry, which will either be VR or be a third-person entry, Resident Evil 9, and then off the back of that, they're remaking the old games, which hopefully. They'll remake 5 and then they'll remake 6, and they're bringing them to a current audience. And obviously, the basis of this is that I think that Capcom has actually found its own niche of being able to remake old classics that have a style and have its own influences and bring it to 2023, 2024, and show that actually they can still capture that magic and still keep it stylish and still continue to sort of, reach out to audiences. What do you think?
I've completely lost. What did you just say?
That they are remaking lots of things and being able to bring stuff into 2023, into 2024.
Keeping it stylized.
Yeah, still keeping it stylized and still maintaining that sort of stylistic approach, even when they're remaking it.
What do I think? So, I mean, it's definitely setting a standard for how remakes should be, right? Because, Capcom have had a lot of success over the last few years. They've remade, remakes and, sequels. They've been doing really well. The Resident Evil games continue to do well. And the Resident Evil 4 is one of the best-selling games of the year, right? And as well as, an addition to Street Fighter. Oh, granted, we've had some mild criticism about the style of it, but I'd argue that Street Fighter is still a game that everyone knows, and is a game that probably will do well. I think I'm not entirely sure they should go down the serious angle.
No.
Putting the two words together there, the serious angle, because I think the charm came from it feeling like a comic book style, the like you said, the paint strokes and things like that, and just kept it sort of fun and light and colourful. That for me is what Street Fighter is all about. As soon as you put dark tones into that game, it doesn't really work, especially as a lot of your characters are colourful. I mean, look at Cougar. Is his name Cougar? Something like that. He's like green. That green, is that his name?
What, in Street Fighter?
Yeah,
Blanka.
What is his name? That's the one. Blanka. Where am I? I'm thinking of someone from Tekken now. You've got Tekken in my head. Yeah, so Blanka, yeah, he's green, like, and colourful, and he's got, like...
Orange hair.
Yeah, he's just a colourful orange hair, yeah. I think they should stay with that, and keep with what works. I don't necessarily think they should not use the engine, but for the mechanics rather than for the visuals, because they're two different games. Granted, they're by the same studio, but don't bring those worlds together, because they're not the same world. Resident Evil and Street Fighter is a different world. And so I do, with all that aside though, I do think, Capcom know how to keep a franchise alive, is what I would say. I
think what is understated about Capcom as a studio is they're a bit of a silent killer. Because we focus on the Assassin's Creed, we focus on the new big, the Fortnites and the stuff like that, and then we don't realise that actually the last 4 or 5 games that Capcom have put out have all been bangers.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a company that don't need to rely on much marketing. Capcom is one of those, they're a studio, and they're a Japanese studio, and famously across the globe, Japan as a culture is popular, right, amongst many people, and that isn't just limited to the country itself. That includes their pop culture. People love anime, people love manga, and people love Ghibli and things like the Japanese game studios such as Capcom, and so, or Nintendo, of course. And so I think they already know they've got their following, and it's a cult following that is massive. It spans far and wide, the Capcom. And I think what's good about Capcom games as well, they're quite accessible and they're inoffensive. There's nothing really in them that, like Resident Evil as a horror game, kind of isn't that grotesque. It kind of works on more of a fantasy horror rather than it being sort of a surrealist horror or an illusionist horror or anything like real either. It's all very fantasy based. It's inoffensive. Like, it's not targeting a specific audience, and they make games that are very accessible to people. So yeah, I think that's just kind of where I'm at with Capcom. Really, I think they're a what's the word I'm looking for? They are a flagship company within the gaming industry. They've been around for a long time, and I think they will continue to set a benchmark for games. I just think don't go serious. No.
And off the back of that, what do you think? Obviously, for me, I need a Dead Rising remake.
You do. But I think I want to. I have one at this point.
Yeah. I'll be taking a day off work for that bad boy. If any other games, obviously, that you've seen, what would you like to see, or what direction would you like them to go in? And
what, Capcom?
Yeah.
So I think go back to what works. Go back to the basics. Keep the game stylized to the tone of that game, right? I think I don't necessarily want too much. If I'm being honest, not a lot of Capcom's games are my cup of tea. To be honest, I don't love fighting games that much. I'm gonna play Mortal Kombat. Sorry, Capcom, because I want to be Omni-Man or I want to be Homelander.
All day.
Right? All day.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to watch Omni-Man fight Homelander. Like, that is one of those who'd win in a fight kind of moments. And it's like, well, now we can find out. So I'm going to play that. But then again, I don't think I've ever owned a Mortal Kombat.
No.
I owned a Street Fighter on PS3. I think it was Street Fighter 4.
That's when they started the stylization of Street Fighter 4.
Right, and interestingly, that's when I got it, because I was into the style. I very much like, I think we know about me, I like very, like, cartoonish style. I like stylized, I like cell shading, I like that. It's a fantastic art form, and it's not a dying art form, so I don't want them to lose that by going fully realistic, because it just doesn't work as some things. And I've never been a Resident Evil fan. Ever. I prefer... Yes, I know it's inoffensive and it's fantasy horror, but fantasy horror isn't my cup of tea. I like things like... I know Last of Us is fantasy entirely, but it's different, right? It feels real. There's a humanity element to it.
Okay.
That's what I prefer. That being said, I can appreciate the art form of everything they make. I know when I'm looking at a Capcom game.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway.
That is it. They've got their signature mark on these games, and I know when I'm looking at it. They're a company that have kept the nostalgia of playing an arcade game onto your mainstream consoles that you can enjoy from the comfort of your own home. That is something I want them to keep. So if my takeaway from your question here, I know I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent, but my takeaway from your question here is that going forward, from a visual standpoint, I don't really care what games they make. Just stay true to yourself. Stay true to who they are as a company. The stylization is what makes Capcom Capcom. It feels very authentic.
I like it.
So yeah,
I like it.
What about you though? I'm curious.
There's a couple, because I'm with you in a lot of respects, which is a very painful thing to admit.
We're often on the same page about things, Josh.
You
just hate to admit that we are.
Again, I hate to admit you're right now. So I wasn't a huge... See, I grew up with the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 when there were tank controls and you were going around the mansion, and it was just, the pinnacle of technology, which looks horrendous now, but I got back into them with the remakes. So I played Resident Evil 2, and I highly recommend Resident Evil 2. I think you'd love it. And then I played Resident Evil 3, and I liked that sort of feeling of being like a fan of watching the games as a child, going, that's just not for me. And then as I've got older, being like, oh my god, I want to play that. And to the point where I've played it on Xbox, I want to say. And they're cheap on Steam at the moment. They're like £8 for Resident Evil 2. And I'm like, I could go through that again. And there's not a lot of games I can say that I could go, you know what, I could play that again, and I'd actually actively want to play it again. Especially with games that have come out recently, where it's just like, I could actually play that instead. But for me, I'd like to see some, because they are the studio that is doing the remakes, and it's not a slant on them. They're doing them well.
No,
and if everybody else is making normal stuff, and Capcom goes, actually, can I take this IP from another studio and actually remake it and make it look better? Like if Capcom was doing the Metal Gear Solid remake, oh my god, I'd be all over it. Someone else is doing that, but I think because they've got that pedigree of doing remakes, I think that they are sort of making themselves being like, yes, we make original games, but also we make the gold standard of remakes and have brilliant art styles. Another game I'd like to see that they did do was Dino Crisis, which is essentially Resident Evil with dinosaurs.
That sounds... I would enjoy that more. I like my dinosaurs, people. See it right here. It's on my t-shirt.
If you give me Resident Evil 2 graphics, it doesn't have to be Resident Evil 4, it doesn't have to be the best thing ever, but it looks like Resident Evil 2, and I'm fighting T-Rexes with a bazooka. Money. Take it. Take all of it, Yeah. And I'm there for that. And, it's nostalgia for me as well. We just talked about, Tears of the Kingdom and how, like, is that the best game ever made? And, is nostalgia making that, making that change? Because I could go, well, Gears of War, for me, best game ever made. Dead Rising, best game ever made. But, like, if I compare them, and for me, I want to see these games from my childhood that are nostalgic to me, that I sit on the bed watching them going, oh, that's dinosaurs. Oh, that's really cool. And actually, like, replaying them as an adult going, so this is what it's like to have that fun as a child, because I was too young to play these games, but I did watch them. I watched my brother play them. So for me, it's a big nostalgia thing, like being able to replay these games and be like, oh, this was the hype back then.
Yeah, there's certainly a company that have used the nostalgia well. I think what makes it good for them is, yes, they've made a lot of games, but they've kept the core franchises going, and they haven't gone down for a lot of those games, they haven't gone down a whole new direction.
No.
They've stayed true to the value of that particular franchise. Resident Evil, I feel like, very much hasn't changed over the last 20 years, 40 years. But sorry, I don't know where I got 20. 40 years, right? It hasn't changed a lot. And the same with Street Fighter. Street Fighter is still Street Fighter. I mean, there's not an awful lot you can do with a fighting game anyway, but you get my point. I think they know what works for them, and they stick with it. They implement new mechanics because you have to. Times change. You have to roll with that. But they use nostalgia well. I think that's what makes it work, is they use it well. They don't just slap the name of Street Fighter and Resident Evil and something and not put the work into, to back it. Do you know what I mean?
I think I'm gonna devil's advocate tin hat. Gotta every episode.
It wouldn't be a Code and Colour episode if you didn't, Josh.
Well, I think the direction they're going in is because they're releasing Exoprimal with dinosaurs and mech suits.
They're obviously going to make new franchises, right?
True. Yes. So they are going to make their brand new IPs, and they're going to try and reach new audiences and get new ideas out. Obviously you don't want to be a stalemate of creative, freedom. Make your new IPs. But I think the way that this could go, if Exoprimal does well, for instance, and I think it will. I think it'll. It might come out with a fart. It might come out with a bang, and people are like, oh.
I don't think it's. If I'm being honest, I don't think it's going to sell out. I don't think it's going to do very well, massively, on a wider audience, because it's a multiplayer game.
Ah, true. Well, in that vein, though, I think there's going to be two ways that they're going to go. They're either going to go down the Dino Crisis route and go, oh, actually, people really love dinosaurs. We should try and make a Dino Crisis remake. Or the other side of that is the mech side of it, to which they'll go, why don't we make a Lost Planet remake?
Maybe that's what they're doing with this. They're feeling it out, and we've seen this before, right? We've seen this from Capcom, which is why they do their remakes.
I'd play a Lost Planet remake. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do remember it.
Yeah.
I remember both of those games very well. So maybe that's what they're doing. They're feeling it out, testing the waters, seeing if people still want to buy into that. If I'm being honest, I was just thinking when we were talking about it, dinosaurs as a whole is an it's an untouched market, I think. There's not enough dinosaur games out there, right, that isn't just Jurassic World builders, all right? I want big, scary dinosaur games.
There is a game called Extinction, which I played, which is just like Doom with dinosaurs.
No, I don't want that.
But that one, it didn't do it.
Doom is a niche thing.
I want to be crouched down in a kitchen, getting hunted by Velociraptor.
Yeah, I want the first 3 Jurassic Park films in what, like, not those stories, but the vibe of those 3 films in a game. Yeah, I want to be like hanging over the edge, like in Lost World, where you're hanging over the edge in a bus, or whatever it is, an RV sort of thing, whilst 2 dinosaurs are duking it out on top of the cliff. Yeah. That's what I want. I want that. I want that sheer horror factor, and I want these dinosaurs to be so big that I have to go like that.
Yeah,
I don't ask for much, right? Just give me a cool dinosaur game. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
and I think that's so hopefully Capcom go, damn, people do like dinosaurs. Let's make some more dinosaur games, because I'm in. Yeah, I'm still a 5-year-old kid. I love dinosaurs. So do that.
Yeah. So that's been our sort of deep dive into Capcom.
That kind of rounds it off, I would say. So if you aren't playing enough Capcom games, boy, you look silly. why you listen to this podcast if you've not even played a Capcom. Get and play some Street Fighter.
Yeah, Tyler. Get and play some Resident Evil.
To be fair, I don't actually like a lot of Capcom.
Get and play some.
So pot calling a kettle black a little bit.
Get out, go play. Yeah, paid tomorrow. You told me. Go get Resident Evil 2. It's cheap. Go buy Resident Evil 2 for your PS4.
Thanks, Josh,
PS5.
for telling everyone my.
There you go.
Anyway, moving on swiftly. So CNC recommendation time, and it comes back to me. I feel like even though we alternate when we do the recommendations, I feel like it's always been ages since I last did my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, I feel like I've not done it in a while. But it does fall back to me, and mine is going to be a wonderful anime show from 1998, I want to say, and it's Cowboy Bebop. And it's just great. Like, I'm not a massive anime lover. In fact, it actually came out in 1997. I just had to bring that up to fact check that one. I'm not a massive anime lover for multiple reasons. Some of the plots are a bit far-fetched. And also, some of those shows go on for about 200 episodes in one season.
That was a bit of an understatement. They've gone for about 200 years.
It's just some of them. I almost watch them and go, how do you find the time to make this?
And there's nothing
content?
that happens in there. I tried to watch
Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
Dragon Ball. 20
yeah.
episodes and they've not even had a fight yet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're just still stood around talking.
Looking, and I'm like, get on with it. You know
what is going on? But anyway, so Cowboy Bebop. What I like about it, there is only one season of it, and there's not masses of episodes. I think there's about 20. There's like not a lot of episodes. There's 26 episodes, I want to say, and it's set. It's considered like a neo-noir space adventure, and it follows the adventures of Spike. He is just a cool guy. I wanted to always be him. He's just cool. I really like him. Spike Spiegel, his name is. And then he's got some other people like Faye Valentine, who, baddie. Jet Black. And then they've got a dog, and it's a, what is it? What breed is it? It's a corgi. I can't remember what it's called. It's a space corgi, and it's just fun. Lots of wacky adventures, but not too wacky like something like One Piece. Don't worry. If you want to watch something anime, but you don't want something that just feels a little bit too out there, I'm going to recommend this. It's fun, lots of space fighting, and it's like just super cool. So yeah, this week it is Cowboy Bebop.
Love that.